Welcome, everybody, at the 505 interview series coming to you from the gorgeous frozen tundra of northern Colorado. Hope you're all doing well. Welcome. We got a brand new year, brand new season, and a lot of great shows. Apologize about last week's show. Kim had a family emergency about 2 hours before the show was supposed to start. Had to cancel out the show last week, but we will get Kim rescheduled and have her back on a little bit later on in the year. So, we're back. I'm excited to be here. I'm really excited for my guest tonight. You can really say his family lineage in tobacco really is part of the 5 families of modern tobacco out there. And I'm excited that he's on. Of course, he's also a former first responder from Chicago, a veteran of our amazing armed forces out there, does a lot for our armed forces. He's a purveyor of fantastic tobaccos out there, and I'm glad to have him on. So we'll bring on the president and CEO of Blanco Cigar Company, David Blanco. Welcome, sir. Oops. There we go.
Take 2.
Take 2. That's right. I hit the wrong one. There we go. So we're back. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, brother. It's a pleasure to be here. Better you than me freezing out there. I'm looking at you going, man, I remember those days in Chicago, but I am now in Florida, so I don't have to worry about that.
Lucky.
As you see, I'm wearing a sweatshirt. So
I know so it must be 70 degrees.
Well, I think it got to 70 as a high today, but this week, we're supposed to be anywhere between 55 and 65 for the week for a high. And then the lows are going 45, 50, 52. So for Florida, that's not so good. But we'll take the good with the bad for the couple weeks that we have to wear sweatshirts and pullovers and hoodies. I'll take the sun the rest of the year. I'll suffer with it.
There you go. Already got some fans in the chat there. Cigar Man H, welcome. Shawan Mims, Heart of a Lion Cigars, welcome.
Hold on, let me open my chat box up here. I forgot about that. What's up, guys? Pleasure. Good to see you guys. Or hear you guys. Glad you're with us. Happy New Year to everybody. I wish everybody a Happy New Year from our entire family and from the Blanco Cigar Company. And I hope you had a great holidays. 2025, man, it's got to get better.
I think for some of us, that begins next week.
Yeah, I agree. Try to reserve my political issues because you're going to piss off 50% of the people you say anything to these days.
Yeah.
But from a business perspective, the conservative brand of politics is more friendly to the tobacco industry. And when I say tobacco industry, I mean premium cigars. I'm not talking about cigarettes and any of that other nonsense that's going on out there. But for our industry in particular, they're less aggressive towards us with the regulations, the taxation, and everything else. So we just beat the FDA past year, so one down. Now we gotta get things codified and bring legalities into it with regard to exemptions in law for premium cigars from the FDA. So that's our next hurdle on the legal front at a federal level. Got to protect our industry. Since you're lighting up, I'm gonna go ahead and light up myself.
Yes.
What are you smoking?
I am smoking the Reserva Barber Pole.
Oh, the BG Reserve, bro.
Yes.
Listen, I saw your top 10, and I wasn't on it. And I saw you screaming about this barber pole that you were talking about that you loved.
I held off on smoking this barber pole till you were coming on. Because I'm like, I gotta have you on. So this way you can get the full drool bucket experience live. All right.
Thanks, man. It's a special barber pole. It's not commonly found that you have a barber pole that has all the bells and whistles with the blend that we put together with that cigar. That actually is a Connecticut shade grown in the Tolunga Valley at one of the family's farms. And a Mexican San Andreas. It's box pressed, pigtail, closed foot. Just got a 93, I think, with that cigar. That's part of our Cigar Obsession brand. It's called the BG Reserve. It only comes in the Toro size in the barber pole. The other three sizes, Robusto, Short Lonsdale, and a Figurado, which is, I guess for you guys that aren't familiar, a Figurado can come in a lot of different shapes. It's actually kind of like a Drew Estate pig, if I was to barrel pig, but box pressed, because they're all box pressed, pigtail, closed foot. That's about the size of those three are not barber pole. Only the Toro is the barber pole.
It's fantastic.
The other three
just off the bat, it's fantastic.
Thank you. The other three are solid Mexican San Andreas. So we're very proud of that cigar, and the entire Cigar Obsession series or brand that we have, because we have 4 blends in that brand: Ecuadorian, Sumatran, box pressed, 4 sizes; Cameroon, 4 sizes. That's round. The Habano comes in 4 sizes in box pressed. And then the BG Reserve comes in 4 sizes: box press, pigtail, closed foot, and then the barber pole. We did that one as a special.
But you have made my top 10 list in 2021 with the Broadleaf Liga Exclusiva. Yes, so you have made my top 10 list back in 2021.
Thank you,
with that cigar. That was such a phenomenal cigar that I smoked an awful lot of that year.
Wow.
And I don't know why. Because most of the cigars that I had in my top 10 for 2021 were broadleaf. So I think I was going through I was like in a broadleaf phase during 2021, because 2020 was San Andreas phase for me. 2019 I was going through a Connecticut phase. It's just kind of been like these phases every year that I hit, and I think yours hit like beautifully. You had my number 4 cigar of the year for 2021 with the Broadleaf Liga.
Well, let me give you some suggestions. Number 1 for 2025 for you. Number 6 for you. Number 1 for 2027 for you. We'll make Gambino 2028 number 1 if you want. Cigars, bro. I got lots of blends. I lay them all here in front of you, just in case, to reference them in case you want to talk about them. I got like 15 cigars in front of me.
That you really do make a lot of everything for everybody's palate. From kind of, hey, I'm the casual smoker, just something that's on the lighter, milder side, to that full-fledged that wants to get kicked in the teeth when they smoke.
Yeah, and I do that because, I love cigars. I am a cigar smoker first. I'm not the guy that'll tell you I only smoke one thing, because that's ridiculous. It's like saying you only drink one beer or one scotch, or you eat filet on every night. So in life, it's variety is the spice of life. So even I understand that you don't feel like this particular way every day of the year. And I want to be able to stay in business, because it's not only my hobby and my passion, but it's my livelihood. So this is what I do full time. I have for now 27 years next month. So that being said, to stay in business, you have to have a product in every niche or every genre of the industry of cigar smokers that you can possibly have to remain profitable and successful. So that's why we have, for example, in front of me, I'll read them off: just Ecuadorian Sumatran wrapper, Cameroon I mentioned, Mexican San Andreas I mentioned, a Habano from Nicaragua, Habano Rosado, Habano Maduro, Corojo, Connecticut Shade, Pennsylvania Broadleaf, Sumatra from Indonesia, Corojo again. I've got the gamut. And then I make cigars for other people. I've used tobaccos from around the world, from Brazil to Paraguay to Colombia. Even extraneous Peruvian, Panamanian tobacco. So being able to work, our family, and you mentioned it. So you mentioned about my family being in the industry and one of the larger families. I'll explain that to everybody who's not familiar. The Blanco family started growing tobacco in 1886 in Cuba. So I am the 5th generation in the family. However, the first American born in the United States. My father, of course, his generation, the fourth generation, lost everything in Cuba in the revolution in 1960, 61. 59 was the revolution. So 60, 61, they left. What's going on, Josh? Welcome. And so when they fled and came to the United States, like the story of all Cubans, they lost everything. They came here with the clothes on their back. If you had a business or some type of industry, you lost it, from Bacardi family to the smallest little guy that was growing sugar, right? So our family's industry, our legacy would have died with my father's generation. It wasn't until I popped out in Chicago. So that's the accent you hear. You mentioned that earlier. And go Bears, by the way. Beat Green Bay.
Yes.
I know you're a Bears fan. We ended on a high note. It was a disaster of a year, but we ended on a high note.
I know. Now we just got to get the coach right.
Yeah, no kidding. All of them. All of them. But that said, I popped out in Chicago. And when I became a young man, and cigars had always been around, right, as a young man, but I never really understood what they meant growing up in the city. I'm a city kid, an American kid. And Rockstar, what's up, baby? Good to see you, bro. And growing up in the city as a Chicago kid, I was in the streets and playing ball and, skitching with the snow when it was snowing out and just getting into trouble like every other kid in the city. And cigars were always in the background. Like, my grandfather would be smoking cigars. Or they're playing dominoes and drinking coffee and the Cuban thing, right? It was just always part of, life. The smell was always there, the aroma, seeing it, But it was just something the old men did back then in the 70s and 80s. It was old men. It was not what it is today. And, you have your proverbial first cigar with your father. Generally speaking, that's the story of a lot of young men, right? It's their transition into manhood. Your father hands you a cigar, you sit down, you smoke it, and discuss manhood. My father did that with me, but it wasn't to discuss, you're now an adult, you're a man, here's your first cigar. It was, now let me explain to you what this cigar means to your family and what it meant for family for four generations. And I got to hear and learn the story from him that I had never heard before about the family starting in 18. By the way, interesting for you, I think I mentioned this to you when I saw you last. My family started growing tobacco, as you heard me mention, in 1886. What year is significant in 1880 in your world?
In 1886.
Oh, you're going to get fired. Coca-Cola started in 1886.
Oh, yeah.
You know that. Come on, bro.
I probably should. I probably should know that, but
I was going to say, all the guys that I could actually use that line, because I usually tell people, I said, my family's been growing tobacco as long as Coca-Cola's been around. And
you know what? You did say that, and I remember we were laughing, and then we started talking about Coke.
That's right. And you're the only guy I know that works for Coca-Cola.
Yeah, geez. Boy, I'm a bad employee. You'd think I would remember that after 16 years.
I gave you a softball right there.
So, you did. I failed.
So my family's been in this business as long as Coca-Cola, one of the largest businesses, if not the business in the world. But it was lost. It was lost. So I felt an obligation to my family's legacy, to the four generations of my father's too, because I was, my father's telling me the story about his father, his grandfather, his great-grandfather, and I'm going, oh my God. And I'm going, it was all gone. It was all wiped away. It was all taken from us. It as everybody was. And I'm sitting there going, my Lord, I got to live with this now, right? I got to live with the family's lost, whatever, that it's never to be. And I had this sense of, I can't just let it, now that I know, right? It started eating at my conscience. And I was like, boy, this is a sad story, but I'm going to have to live with it. And I got a little bit older. And then in 1992, 93, this goofy magazine came out called, and I was smoking cigars as a young man, because I had this affinity towards what it meant to my family, right? And the legacy that was lost. And nobody my age was smoking cigars. Like I said, it was all old men back then in the early 90s, late 80s. And so my friends would all be like, what are you smoking a cigar for? And then I'd tell them, he's Cuban. His family used to be in the business and blah, blah, blah. Well, this funny magazine came out in 1993 called Cigar Aficionado. Changed everything. I got to hand it to him. His magazine created a culture. It started a revolution in the industry, a revitalization or a rebirth, as they say. And it suddenly became very chic, nouveau, bourgeois to be smoking a cigar. We used to, in the 90s, call them yuppies. All these young urban professionals started smoking cigars because it was posh and exciting, and this magazine was promoting this expensive lifestyle, which is what the magazine was all about, this lifestyle, cigar smoking lifestyle. Expensive watches and G5 jets and expensive liquor and trips to these exotic places and things in the cars, sports cars, all these things that almost nobody could afford except the cigar, which was the genius of it, right? So if I can't enjoy that lifestyle, I'm going to portray that I'm enjoying that lifestyle. I'm going to smoke a cigar because that's what people in this lifestyle do. So everybody wanted to participate, right? So this is when cigar shops changed from, cash and carry. You'd go to the cigar shop and pick a cigar out of a cabinet or a glass top counter or something like that, and you pay for it and you'd leave. Well, that's when those guys started going, wow, sales are picking up. But where is everybody smoking these cigars? Because the old guys used to go sit on the stoop. They used to go to their house and play dominoes or cards. They'd go to the park and sit on the bench or play chess you know what I mean? They were public or private areas. So these cigar shops suddenly realized, if I set up a place for them to lounge, they'll stay, and I'll sell more cigars. And that's what really was the birth of what we consider the modern day cigar lounge in the United States. Because you'd go to a cigar shop in the 80s and 90s. I remember going to get cigars, and they thought I was nuts, by the way. And there's two chairs and an old man, and it's a carpeted room, and you ring you up and you'd leave. That was it. So, and they had like 4 different cigars. They had Te Amos, they had Fuentes, they had Cuesta Reyes, a few, the legacy brand, Punch, Monte Macanudo, stuff like that. They have more than 4, but not a lot of selection because they didn't need it. It wasn't as lucrative an industry back then. And cigars, $3, $4, $2 in some cases.
I remember when I first time I went into a cigar shop at 18, and I brought $100 with me because I didn't know how expensive they were. All I knew was all the cool bad guys that you rooted for and all the cool good guys that you liked in movies and TV smoke cigars. And I said, I want to try it.
I want to participate in that lifestyle.
I'm like, it's so cool. And so when I went and I walked in, I skipped school, which, that's something I did a lot. I drove 30 miles to the cigar shop in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Oh. And I walked in and I said, hey, I don't know what I'm doing. This is my first time. I just turned 18 today. And they took me back into the humidor, and I thought it was glorious, and it smelled so fantastic. And the owner and the owner's son picked out 3 cigars for me and said, these are good cigars for you to try out to get started on. I said, okay, great. You're going to check me out. And I go, I only have $100. Is that enough? Because I thought it was like exclusive. And he goes, don't worry about it. These are on us. If you like it, You'll be back. And I lit up that first cigar, and I immediately go, yeah, I think this is going to be a problem.
Good deal, man. Good deal. What, by the way, I used to sell to one shop in Santa Fe and one in Albuquerque. I don't know if we still sell to those guys because we don't have a rep out there. What was the name of the shop you were at?
Santa Fe Cigar Company.
I think that's still in existence then. That's
last time I checked, it was father and son, Big James and Little James, owned the shop, and
That's the name of it.
they also had the only lounge in the area that you could smoke in, and it was downtown in one of the old historic buildings.
Wow.
Beautiful.
So that's basically how this evolved into what we have now, is that these cigar shops became cigar lounges, and then things started proliferating with the growth of Cigar Aficionado magazine, and it spread into fine bourbons and scotches. And it created this whole culture around smoking the cigar.
We see Rockstar makes this comment about me, but yet every time we get together, he wants to hang out with me.
Well, listen, he needs an entourage, right? So
I know, he don't want the smoke that comes with me, he don't want that, because I have to show off how well I make a chainmail mesh tank top better than he does it.
You guys can have that competition. I'm out. I'll just judge.
Yeah. I think that those early, the early years of Cigar Aficionado, I think influenced a lot of people out there who probably would have never gotten into it or wanted or thought about it.
Absolutely.
But, I think also as me as a teenager in the late 90s, it also had an influence on me as well as television and movies, because I just thought these were like cool guys. Like, man, that guy's cool. I know he's the bad guy. I know he's going to die at the end, but he just looks so badass smoking a cigar, because, why I'm like, well, I want to try that. And then kind of getting ingrained in that culture where, like, hey, if you're going out playing golf, everybody smokes Macanudos or Cohibas out on the golf course.
That's right.
And when I was younger, and I noticed that because when I was younger, I worked at one of the private golf resorts in the cart barn, and when they bring back the carts, they'd always have cigars in there, and there were always Macanudos or Cohibas that they had left in the golf carts.
Yeah, Macanudo was the #1 rated cigar of selling cigar for years. For years, was the best selling cigar. I think it was the Hyde Park. The Hyde Park, I think, was the number one selling cigar of like multiple years, for years and years and years. And then I think it got overtaken by Romeo and Julieta or something like that. But for years, it was Macanudo.
Yeah. So there was always that influence. I think that type of media had a lot of influence on people who've been smoking for a long time, especially around my age, those that are that 40 plus.
Yeah. What's this question, Anthony? Is how many cigar clips did you get? What does it mean?
I don't know how. I think there's also a secondary conversation going on in the chat. How many? Off the cart, how many cigars did I get? When they would leave, a couple of them would always leave their travel doors in the cart, and then they wouldn't come back and get them, and so they found their way into my humidor. Because they were far better cigars, or more expensive cigars than what I was buying.
You mean the lost and found?
Yes, my house.
That's right. It was still lost and found. Once they left it on the car, it goes to lost and found. I get it.
Yeah. So it was always there. My first high-end lighter came out of that golf cart. Nice. My first travel door came out of that golf cart because nobody came and claimed them, and I'm like, well, I'll do it.
Well, it's slowly evolved over the years to, what we have now, and what we have now is just insane. The culture and the society of cigar smoking has led us to what we're doing now. We have podcasts. We have different types of cigar lounges. Cigar lounges now, I categorize into 3 different groups, because they're not just cigar lounges or cigar shops, or cigar bars. There's cigar shop, cigar bar, cigar club. Because I've gone to some places where the DJ's booming, the drinks are flowing, people are dancing and smoking cigars. That's a club. And then you go to the other ones, which is a cigar bar, where people are sitting at a bar enjoying a nice cocktail, smoking a cigar, maybe some background music, talking. And then there's your regular cigar shop lounge, which they serve coffee. You got some chairs. You got a TV for some sports. So there's different types. I mean, different genres in completely of cigar lounges.
Well, Cigar Man H, if you attended Dallas Smoke Fest like David and I did, we were at a few of those clubs that were banging and the drinks were flowing and people were dancing and
Oh yeah,
smoking all night long.
if you
Had a
have
great time.
a cigar shop, club, lounge, whatever you want to call it, if you haven't been to a place that's a purveyor of cigars that has liquor and a DJ, that's just what I consider a cigar club. Because the music is like any nightclub,
Yeah.
and it's booming and it's crazy. But it's a different vibe. It's got to be what you're looking for. Sometimes you want to go to a nightclub. Sometimes you just want to go to a bar. Sometimes you just want to go have a stick. So a lot of these places have survive and thrive depending on what people want to do.
One thing I wanted to talk to you about is, I've been, I go to, I've been to the numerous trade shows and I've walked by when you've been talking to customers. And one thing that I've noticed that you do when you're talking to customers is you let the cigars and the tobacco and your blending speak for itself when you're talking to them. And you really just, it's like, here's this, and you provide a little bit of a background on the story about the cigar. Because I believe the story is just as important as the smoke is. And if you can provide that background, because now it's like, okay, so the history behind this blend that you're smoking is this and this, it adds to the context and enhances my smoking experience. But is that you also don't kind of rely on that family name to sell what you have. That's just an afterthought out there. It's like, did you like it? Was it great? Oh, if it matters to you, it's also Placencia tobacco. I mean, if you care. But
that's the first time you just mentioned the name, actually. So that's where we were going with this conversation when we talk about the family. So the Placencia family and the Blancos are cousins. How I got into the business is I just told you my family's legacy that was completely lost. That in 1998, I finally got around to saying, you know what, I'm going to do something about this. I was old enough. I had enough money in my pocket, and I had enough cojones to ask my father and my uncle to be my partners because I still couldn't do it by myself in my mid-20s. And I said, listen, cigars are blowing up. I think there's an opportunity here. Why don't we open up our own factory? Can't do it by myself. So I was wondering if you would be my partners. And basically how it went was, if you invest everything you own, we'll become your partners. It was a gut check. They wanted to make sure I was serious. I look back at it now and I go, because I'm their age now. And so I'm going, if my 20-something-year-old kid came to me and said they want to open up a cigar factory, I'd have to make sure that he was pretty damn serious about it. And that's a big venture to get into. You never know when you're starting something like that, how deep the pool really gets and how expensive it can be. So they wanted me to make sure that I was vested and that I wasn't going to, suffer from ADD and suddenly lose interest and then a couple years later go do something else. So they figured if they had me invest everything I owned, then if I was willing to do that, they knew I was serious. And so I was, and I pushed all my chips in, and we opened up a factory in Ybor City in 1998. Now this discussion happened in 1996. I had to do my due diligence. We had to figure out what I was going to do, but we actually opened the doors, incorporated in 1998. And my uncle was running the factory in Ybor City. My job was learning the product, learning how to make the product, blending wise, designing of the packaging, and sales. I was the one on the road that I was going to sell. My father was not going to be on the road. My uncle had to run the day-to-day operations of the factory. My father handled all the administrative issues, legal, books, banking, taxes, licensing, import, export of materials, payroll, that kind of thing. So we all had our own lane. But unfortunately, 2 years after we opened, my Uncle Francisco was his name, my father's brother, he came down with MS. And he came down with MS because he was exposed to Agent Orange in Vietnam. Remember, they came here in the 60s as young men. So once they got through with high school, they joined the military and subsequently went to Vietnam. My uncle came back with low dosage exposure never really affected him. He was in his 20s. But it was until he hit his 50s, and that's when, boom, like a light. Has good stories behind the names of this. Oh, I'm listening to Rockstar. I'm reading as I'm talking. So he he started getting sick all of a sudden, like off the bat. We had just opened the factory in '98, and in 2000 he started suffering from acute symptoms of numbness in his legs and started not being able to walk and blindness in his eye, and then it would come back, and then he couldn't feel his right arm, and it had to get diagnosed, and it took forever. And so by 2000, he was like, "Listen, I can't run the factory anymore. I can't run this day-to-day operation." Well, we're like, "Well, now what?" So we ended up calling our cousins in Nicaragua. My father called Nestor Placencia Sr., his generation. They're about 3-4 years apart. And I said, "Listen, Frank can't walk. He can't run the operation anymore. Can we shift production to your facility if we have to close the factory?" And Nestor said, "Of course, come on down." So in 2000, we did close the factory and moved to Esteli, Nicaragua. And now I was still living in Chicago. My father was still living in Chicago. My uncle Francisco, who lived in Tampa by Ybor City, he faded out of the business, and we shifted to Nicaragua. So then I went there to learn, continue to learn my blending skills. And that's where I met my mentor. His name was Evelio Oviedo Dominguez. This guy, who was the master blender for Placencia at the time, was in his late 70s. He started when he was 8 years old, a little Cuban guy from the industry back. He started when he was 8 years old, and he had been in the industry his whole life. He was, before the revolution, the rolling union president. The rollers, they had a union back then before the revolution, and he was the president of the rollers union, which was, I mean, that's it, right? He also worked at the H. Upman factory and was head of quality control, master roller, and as a result, they also made him a master blender. And he was given the opportunity to blend cigars for the Cuban industry back before the revolution, when it was still privately held. And he actually, to this day, is given credit for 2 iconic cigars. He is the man behind the Monte Cristo No. 2 and the Monte Cristo No. 4. So I got an opportunity, and I didn't know that when I met him. I just met him as the Placencia Master Blender, but I got to learn a lot about who he was, and I ended up having him as a mentor for 11 years before he died. And so as a sponge, as a Padawan, for those of you that are Star Trek fans or Star Wars fans, he was my Jedi Master, and I was try to be the best Padawan I could and learn as much as I could, knowing that I could never, a lifetime of experience that he had, learn everything. But I focused as much as I could on the blending, which was the skill set that I wanted to focus on, because I wanted to create cigars. That was my art form. I wasn't going to ever be a grower. I was never going to be a farmer. That's what the Placencias did. Fermentation is the next link in the chain. I did have to learn about fermentation, because that changed the tobacco, you use it, because you can manipulate tobacco. And then after that, it's rolling. Now, I had to learn rolling as well, but not rolling to sell cigars. I had to learn how to roll good enough to be able to assemble a cigar while I'm blending the tobaccos. So I am not a master roller. I would never get by selling anything I rolled, but I could roll it to smoke it to go, that's the blend. Then I would give it to a master roller, and then they would produce it for me. And then I would have quality rolled cigars that I could then age for testing purposes. So I had to learn all 4 aspects of the art of making a premium cigar, and those are the 4 links in the chain. But my forte and what I decided to focus on is being a blender. And now, after what I say, almost 28 years, you don't give yourself the title of master blender. It's other people telling you that, right? It's given to you by your peers or people in the industry, and having #1 rated cigar of the year, best value cigar of the year, top this, top that. Once you create a portfolio of well-received and well-respected cigars, that's when people start considering you a true master at what you do. Like anything else, there's a plumber, and then there's a master plumber. There's an electrician, and then there's a master electrician. In this case, there's winemakers, right? And then there's master sommeliers or winemakers or master distillers. I guess now, after almost 30 years, I'm given that honor to be called as such. And I do see that as an honor, because It's my art. I can't paint. I can't draw. I can't make pottery, but I can blend a cigar. And
That you can. When you first started your hand at blending, did that bug hit you pretty hard that you think that you thought this is something that
oh yeah,
I could do? Like it's good, or like when that first cigar that you dropped had some success and people liked it, you're like, all right, all right, I'm up.
yes.
I can do this.
Right. So when we opened the factory in Ybor, I was really green, and I was doing a lot of reading and talking to guys that I knew that were rollers. They weren't necessarily blenders, but they knew about what these tobaccos did versus that tobacco, not how to put them together. So I was smoking a lot of individual tobaccos, trying to understand tastes of individual things, like a chef would taste individual elements of whatever the recipe was, right? To try to figure out what these things bring to the palate into the aroma, right? Because that's the other half of what we do. We have taste and aroma. And certain tobaccos have more taste, others have less taste and more aroma. And blending those together, you marry both, and that's where you get a balanced cigar. And so I was learning about all this at a rudimentary level in the beginning for the first 2 years. And I thought I had a pretty decent handle, and I was making some decent cigars, and we were selling some cigars. And I was still pretty green, but I went hard into it, so I wasn't like just putting out crap, right? There's a lot of stuff out there these days.
Oh,
I don't know what they're doing, but whatever. So there's a cigar and a palate for everything, I always say, but it's just not for me. But that being said, I thought I was doing pretty good. And then I met Avelio at Placencia and realized I didn't know Jack. And I said, I got 2 ears and one mouth. I'm going to listen twice as much as I speak. And I'm just going to let this guy teach me as much as he is willing and able to teach me, because guys like him, they're a handful in the world. In the world, they're a handful. So I was very lucky. As a matter of fact, he's on my wall. He means so much to me. This is my office, by the way. I look at him every day. He passed now, I think it was 2011. But I will turn my camera around, and you get to see the rest of my office a little bit here. I got some stuff on the wall, blah, blah, blah. My bar, which is kind of half on the floor. One of my shelves broke, and I got about 130 bottles. But that is Avelio. I don't know if you can see him right there on the wall. There he is. That's a good shot of him. Avelio was a very he's missed dearly by people who know him in the industry. To give you kind of an idea of how heavy he was in this business. Because unless you're really in the business, you really don't know who the blenders are. You know who the faces and the owners of the companies are, but you really don't know who blended the cigar. Avelio was revered by a guy you do know who's at the front, and his name is Pepin Garcia. When you mention, and Pepin won awards and was one of the, the guys of his generation, right? And then he came to the United States. He was the guy, right? Avelio was the generation before him, and he looked up to Avelio. That's the kind of guy he was in the industry. And when you have your name stamped on the Monte Cristo #2, how much higher can you get in this business?
Yeah. You can't.
I can't tell you how lucky I felt. I walked into listen, first of all, you can't pick your family, right? The fact that I happen to be related to Placencia, I had nothing to do with, and I was very lucky. The fact that they allowed me to come to their factory and work at their factory, and I've now been working at their factory for 25 years, blending cigars, not only for myself, but 12 other companies, is another. I'm indebted to them for the rest of my life. My father, who trusted me to become my partner. And then there's Avelio, who taught me my craft. Between Placencia, my father, and Avelio, these are the guys that's the only reason I'm sitting in front of you at all talking about cigars today, because of them. I grew up in this with their help, and I succeed because of what they were able to pass on to me and what they continue to pass on to me. Now it's Nestor Jr., right? Nestor Andres. He's now taken over. His father's retired for all intents and purposes. My father retired in 2018. So, it's more than a company name. It's a history. It's a family legacy, truly a legacy that I want to propagate beyond my generation. I'm the fifth, but I have to build it for the next, because I didn't build this just for me. I didn't say, well, I don't want it to die and then it can die when I'm gone. It's got to continue after me and the next and the next. That's my hope anyway. It may not work out that way because nobody's got a crystal ball and nobody knows how the future is going to go. But I have a nephew who is my godson, and he's the next in line. He's young still, so I have more time to build this bigger, to hand him something. And that's the hope and desire, and I can't do it without you guys. So here's a perfect segue for me to tell you how you can help me, you guys out there watching, or if you see this in rerun. I have set a coupon code for you guys at blancocigars.com in honor of being on your show. And it is for 15% off everything on the site that isn't specially priced already, because we have some special priced items there already. 15% off and free shipping on any order over $75. So you can check out the entire website. We got 6-7 brands of cigars, multiple blends and sizes or whatever. You can do 5-packs or boxes or whatever, bundles, whatever you want to do. You're going to get 15% off and free shipping. It's our way of saying thank you, and in honor of having me on the show, I appreciate you having me on, so I want to give your viewers something special.
That's awesome. And again, that's promo code 505 Nation. When you check out on the Blanco Cigars website, you can save yourself some coinage.
That's right. And while you're at it, if you don't mind helping somebody else out, one other thing that we do once a year, and it's always the month of January, is that we do a Cigars for Warriors donation drive. This is our month that we raise cigars and for Cigars for Warriors in conjunction with Cigar Obsession, and then we donate them all at once. And we do thousands of cigars every year. So to that end, what I did is since the FDA has precluded me from giving cigars away, donating them for free. That is technically illegal. Tobacco samples are illegal now. We created a donation bag of 10 cigars for $25. So you can go online, buy your stuff, hit the button for the Cigar for Warrior donation bag for $25. We'll take the 10-pack, and then we'll, at the end of the month, we put them all together. There'll be a count of how many cigars we raise, and then Cigars for Warriors ship them off there, and then they get shipped around the world. The guys and girls out in the front lines supporting our country and protecting our freedoms and way of life. Something that I also did, because I think you mentioned that before, I was also in the military, and I was over there deployed in Afghanistan and a few other places around the world, so I know what it means. And if I can help out and do my part, then I will. Storm Bone, the guy who founded Cigars for Warriors, is a friend of mine, so I'm welcome helping him out anytime I can. But good guys over there, Cigars for Warriors, they have raised over 1 million cigars since their inception to have them sent overseas. So if you can participate in our drive, we would be honored and appreciate it. For $25, 10 cigars to a soldier, sailor, Marine, airman, out in a foreign land in the middle of nowhere. A lot of them, it's their taste of home. You know, it gives them that respite, a little bit of a separation for at least 45 minutes an hour. I know it did for me and the guys in my unit, because I had them shipped over and we gave them to everybody. So I had to close my company for 2 years during the war. My father was deployed to Iraq and I went to Afghanistan at the same time. So my mother wasn't too happy back then. So we had to I had to hand the keys off to the warehouse and be like, hey, listen, if anybody calls or any of the reps place orders, ship the product. But for all intents and purposes, when you step away from your company like that at a very young age in the industry, in the company, in its life, it kind of dwindled. It was almost like starting all over. I got back 20 years ago this past summer. Crazy. I can't believe it was that long ago. It feels like yesterday. But anyway, onward and upward.
Yeah, well, but what you had created prior to going off, that it was enough to sustain that when you did come back, the demand was still there. People were still wanting what you were putting out. So I mean, if you were just kind of a midline brand that nobody, all right, here and there, you probably wouldn't have been able to bounce back as quickly as you did. I mean,
Well,
because of what you create is different and unique and tastes good, and when you went away, people are like, well, where did it go? But then you come back, boom.
yeah, exactly what
It,
happened. When 9/11 happened, my dad left immediately. He was gone. He was mobilized and gone. I had 6 months, and then I was gone. And he handed me the keys. He goes, "Hey, Dave, it's all you. I don't know how much longer you're going to be here, but keep it up as long as you can." So when we had to close, and when I came back, the company it was like starting all over. Literally, we had 12 salesmen around the country. 12. And back then, they were primarily brokers because this was the early days. There were a few people who had in-house, but mostly brokers. Fuente, Drew Estate, everybody. They were all brokers. So we had brokers that were also selling those products. Perdomo, everybody. We were all brokers. And I was one of the very early and young boutique brands. And coming back, I called all those guys up, and they were like, "Hey, listen, fill the portfolio with something else. Don't have any room for you. Sorry." So I didn't step back, right, and turn the key. Actually, the company was in ruin. I mean, I had a bunch of cigars and product in a warehouse that we had maintained, but I had no sales force, and I had no sales because all of my accounts I evaporated for all intents and purposes. So when we showed up to the trade show after missing the trade show, for the year or 2 years or whatever it was, our booth popped back up, and people were like, "Hey, what happened, you guys? You just vanished." And I said, "Well, he went to Iraq, and I was in Afghanistan, but we're back now, and we're open back up." They're like, "Really?" We're like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Thank you very much for your service. I'll take 10 boxes." And that's how it happened. Now, my father, by the way, wasn't convinced when I came back that we should continue because it was literally, we lost every salesman I had. So we had nobody on the road to reinvigorate the brand. So when I came back, my dad said, "Listen, Dave, sometimes, it was the real world talk, I was still young." And he goes, "Listen, sometimes the world gets in the way and things don't always go the way you want them to, no fault of your own, but this is life. And sometimes they don't work out the way you want them to. The world changed in 9/11 for a lot of people. A lot of people's lives were ruined, livelihoods completely changed. And, this might have been the cost for you." And he goes, "You can do other things. You've got degrees, you've got experience." By that time, I had already been a deputy sheriff in Cook County, which is Chicago, and I had left that job and went to the Chicago Fire Department. I was a Chicago firefighter paramedic. So I had this was my third, and I was still in the Army Reserves. So I had other, experience in life that I could capitalize and do. And I was actually offered jobs to go back overseas as a contractor. So I had other opportunities. And my dad was like, "Listen, maybe it just wasn't meant to be. You gave it a great shot. You were successful at it, but, maybe it just wasn't in the cards." And unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, can be pretty stubborn. And when I say stubborn, um, I'm doggedly motivated. I'm that guy that I should have been a Marine. I went to the Army, but the Marines are like, never say die, never quit, never give up. I've always been that way in my life. And so when I came back, all I saw was, okay, challenge accepted. I'm going to do this. And I didn't go back to the fire department. I didn't do anything else except stay in the reserves. And on a shoestring now, because I lost all my investment money, and from now, all I had, thank God, it was proud, was get on the road, live on the road, travel the country, and sell all the cigars myself. And that's what I did. And here I am now, 21 years, right? It was last year was 20 years. So 21 years now, here I am before you, I think we're in almost 40 countries. We sell in every continent in the world, in the planet, except Antarctica. I can't get those pesky penguins to smoke yet. And I make cigars for a number, over 10 companies now, I think, that people have come to me and said, listen, Dave, we love your cigars. Would you make a cigar for us? And with the resources I've had at Placencia, I've been able to do that. And so that also subsidized growing my company back. And so now I do that for others. I actually do services here at our warehouse. We have a 5,000 square foot space here in the Seminole area, which is Clearwater, Florida. And we import for other companies. We warehouse for other companies. We pick, pack, ship for other companies. I will do other services for other companies that are smaller or medium size because it's actually cheaper for them to have me do it than for them to set it up themselves. Right? I'm a U.S. Customs bonded warehouse. I'm a U.S. Customs bonded facility, which was extremely expensive. That's a whole nother story. I had to do that because of the change in the federal excise tax that President Obama instituted, which was called at the time S-chip. We went from a 2.5-cent import tax for cigars, federal excise tax, to 41 cents. That's what he did. Talk about not being friendly to our industry. So overnight, I would import 100,000 cigars, and I'd pay $2,500. Went to $41,000. You know what that did to people in this business?
Yeah.
Well, forget it. How do you do that? So we had to become a U.S. Customs bonded facility, and the way it used to be, it was like an insurance policy. You would bond your facility for a certain amount of money based on the contents that you wanted in bond, right? That so that would cover, it was like if a place burned down or whatever happened, the government would get their federal excise tax, so you'd be insured for that amount. Well, right before Obama left office, I'm not picking on Obama, it just sounds like, because this was all him. He changed the banking regulations, and we then were no longer allowed to buy policies to insure for whatever we needed to insure. We had to be self-insured. That is to say, we had to dollar for dollar get a letter of credit, put it in a CD, and insure ourselves. So now, if I needed, at the time, I think I had $250,000 bond, right? I had to put somewhere, I had to come up with $250,000 and let it sit in a CD and a letter of credit, and that way I'm self-insured. So now I had to basically squeeze out 250 grand rather than just paying a policy every year like insurance. Another big punch in the face, right? So it was just one thing after another for those 8 years. And then, of course, they started the whole FDA thing. That was also Obama, with the regulation having premium cigars now fall under the FDA. Another overreach, which we just beat after 7 years and $20 million legal fees.
I was caught up in that when I worked for Reynolds Tobacco with the FDA taking over the regulation. The FDA ruled that my job was to be eliminated.
I remember you telling me that.
Yeah, so I lost my job, and of course we were going through the economic downturn in 2008, 2009, and I couldn't find a job. Nobody was hiring, and I was, I was a casualty of that.
Yeah, we have been under attack and at war for the past 20 years. For the past since 2008, we've been at war. That's almost 20 years, and that was because we got big enough for people to care about the revenue we started generating. Because remember, this industry was small. Relatively speaking, we are still small, but we are big enough that there's money to be made and for people to have their hand out at the federal level and other places, local levels, municipal, state, that they want their piece.
And you talked about this at one of the events in Dallas, that you ended up having to become more political. You just wanted to be a purveyor and manufacturer of cigars, But because of all this, you've had to get involved, and you've had to get political with, because it's protecting your asset that you've created.
My livelihood.
Yeah, it's your livelihood on that.
To make art, which is make cigars. That's all I wanted to do.
That's all you want to do.
But then I had to be. There's other things I had to learn on the way, right? First of all, I was not a salesman. I had to learn to become a salesman to sell the cigars I made to be able to keep this going, right? So I had to learn how to become a salesman. And then with all this import-export stuff, I had to become a transportation expert. I just wanted to make cigars, bro. So then when we started shipping all over the world, that's a whole nother category for each country. Warning labels in different languages, and how big does the warning label have to be? What are the restrictions? What are the taxes for that country? How do I move product from Nicaragua to Pakistan, for example, or Switzerland, or the Congo? I sell in the Congo. So I mean, everything was like is like the first time I was doing something every time I did it, because every one of these countries is different. So that
you're now the expert on all that, because you had to learn, because again, livelihood, it's what you do.
Yeah,
and I don't think that a lot of people who understand that, where especially those casual people or the anti-smoking people out there, they don't understand that. They only have their preconceived notions. It was like when they were going over the whole tax thing in Wyoming, and I was at the state capitol a couple of years ago, and I was up there as one of the experts in regards to that. And it was just anti-smoking this, anti-smoking that, but there's no substance behind what they're talking about. It's just you're regurgitating what you read in a letter that is mainly not factual, is what you're doing. But you can't answer any of the questions. Because I remember when I was there, I said, so in 2022, how many cigar shops were cited for selling to underage children in 2022? And they didn't have that. I go, but you're pushing that. We got to protect the children, but yet you can't answer that. I go, it's one. One shop was cited, and he was cited for selling to a kid who was turning 21 at midnight, and he was about 3 hours early.
It's just anti-smoking segment of our population.
But
and they're tobacco, and what it really is cigarettes, which then spilled into cigars, dip, hookah, even pipe. I mean, the collateral damage for the rest of the other than cigarette, we call big tobacco, the collateral damage in our industry as a result of what these guys did. No offense, I know you worked for RJ Reynolds, but those guys screwed us, and now we have to live with that. But the hypocrisy truly has been exposed because of what they're trying to do with marijuana.
Yes. I see it every day driving to work.
Yeah,
I see it every day when I drive to work. You can't have tobacco signs promoting, but man, you can have a sign telling you to come get high at this place.
That's right.
It's the difference. And I didn't touch this cigar. I didn't touch the cigarette stuff at Reynolds. I worked on their other side. I worked on their premium tobacco side when they were distributors of cigars.
Yeah, and I get it.
On that. So, that was kind of my forte, because I was like, well, I know about cigars. I mean, I couldn't tell you about cigarettes, but I could tell you about tobacco.
Yeah. So riddle me that, Batman. How is it that everybody's pushing legalization of marijuana as if there are no health risks? Because smoking marijuana, you absolutely have to inhale it.
Yes.
I mean, where's the health risk? They don't even have a filter on that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The hypocrisy's real out there, and it comes back to politics and what you believe. So this is bad for me. All right. But this, it's all right. But this brings in far more of this.
Correct. It's all about the dollars, man.
Yes. It's all about the money. And
where they expose their hypocrisy to everybody. Wait a minute, you can't smoking is bad, and you want to inhale this product, but not this product. This one's legal, This one's not even legal, but you're pushing for legality so people smoke more of it. But wait a minute, And by the way, the health risks of smoking marijuana have not yet fully been realized because they haven't done all the studies on what that does to your lungs. And let me tell you, it ain't good. It ain't.
No, I can't see it. I can't see it being as good. If we know what cigarettes does to your lungs, I can only imagine inhaling in. That has got to have a similar response to your lungs, to your tissue.
Absolutely. Not to mention all the other effects on developing brain and everything else that it does. So, I mean, that's right. As far as risk is concerned, there's a risk with everything in life. But this is minimized because we don't inhale it. We generally don't chain smoke it. And we're not consuming it at younger ages.
No.
It's like saying, can you imagine somebody saying, I became an alcoholic because I just drank too much champagne? You'd go, what? How could you drink that much champagne to become an alcoholic? Well, it's the same thing with cigars and the lung cancer, right? Is that I got lung cancer because I was a cigar smoker.
You really never hear about that. It's not something you don't. And I think one of the during this whole trial against the FDA, that part of what was brought up was there's almost a nil cancer risk involved with cigar smoking because we don't inhale. It stays within the mouth, and that what issues are seen are what you usually get from anything you consume that's combustible produces a carcinogen. Do you like your steak? There's carcinogens on that steak because you're cooking something.
That's right. And then they say, well, mouth and throat cancer and blah. There has not been any study that correlates mouth and
zero
cigarettes. I mean, with
zero.
Cigars. None.
Yeah, zero.
Yeah. Now, dip, they have, because you have the pouch and the tobacco in your mouth on a mucous membrane. And I submit to you, if I put a piece of hot dog in my mouth for 4 hours a day, every day of my life, I'm probably going to get cancer there too from the hot dog. But
get a question coming in the chat is, how do you feel about the majority of studies about tobacco never include a well-aged cigar?
Well, any cigar, whether it's well-aged or not, that's how we've been raising the flag on this because they keep using data that they say studies have been done. I say, show me the study. And we go, that's not a cigar. That's a cigarette.
Yeah.
Why? But see, I use the word ignorance in the term that which it actually means is that they don't know any better. They're uneducated about it. The ignorance by these people that are creating the laws and or trying to propagate these laws and these theories are so uneducated. They equate tobacco and tobacco and tobacco and tobacco. They're all the same. Premium cigar tobacco and cigarette tobacco end at their similarity from when they come from the plant. That's it. First of all, we do not genetically enhance the levels of nicotine in the leaves.
Nope.
Those are GMO'd plants. We do not. Number two, this is where we divert immediately. I got balloons in front of me. What the heck? What were you doing, bro? Number two, we ferment the tobacco, which leaches out the ammonia, which is why we do that. So you can get to the root tastes and aromas of the tobacco. But guess what else it does? Byproduct. It also, during that fermentation process, changes a certain amount of the nicotine molecule into a salt, which is then non-absorbable to your body. So even the residual nicotine that is left in the plant, a majority of that goes away. Is there still nicotine in the plant?
Yes.
Yes, there is. But we even reduce further the level of the natural nicotine in the plant with the fermentation process.
Yeah.
Then we don't inhale it, which is different. We don't add chemicals to it,
Nope.
which is different. There's no other product other than tobacco leaf, like paper and this and glue. None of that.
No.
And then we don't chain smoke it. So frequency level is less. So when you add all of that up together, and then you got this guy up there saying, cigarettes and cigars, say tobacco. We go, no. Again, I go back to the wine thing, right? I go back to the alcohol industry and I go, is 151 the same as Dom Perignon? They still are both alcohol products. Absolutely not. Right? So you can't equate the fact that, yes, they both have alcohol content, then they're both as suspect as becoming, people are becoming alcoholics from one as they are the other. And cirrhosis of the liver from one is the other. No.
Yeah.
It's about frequency and everything else that you do with it. So it's all hooey. It's all hooey, man.
I tell you, the viewers out there, you can see it on YouTube. I watched it being done in real life, but how a lot of cigarettes are made, you can go watch it. A lot of it is these low quality tobacco stems and leaves, and it's boiled into a paste and then spread out so that it looks almost like cardboard, and then it's heated up, sprayed with chemicals, chop, 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 and then put into your cigarettes. That's what you're smoking. I call it a reconstituted sheet of cardboard. Is essentially what a cigarette is.
I feel like I'm kind of like Robert Kennedy here in the cigar industry, because I want to make America healthy again when it comes to smoking tobacco. I'm trying to be the healthy tobacco guy and get rid of all the crap that's used in all of those other products and get rid of them. I mean, it's apples and oranges.
Well, you're doing a great job, because I saw when you were talking at that event, and I was looking at the people in there. A lot of people, I think, didn't have an idea or a clue on that, and when you started digging in deeper, because then you started getting the questions, a lot of the legality issues and questions going in. I think it changed a lot of people's minds about what they thought, or if they had no opinion on why they needed to get involved in like the CRA and some of the trade groups out there that protect the right for us to do this.
Yeah, exactly. Because we're under attack. They want to lump us with cigarettes, and we're not. We need an exception, and it's only gonna happen when the voters, the consumers, speak up to their representatives, elected representatives. And but by the way, these guys, again, it's a two-sided coin here. They want their cake and eat it too. They want the revenue from us, but they want to eliminate us. Well, which is it? So when we argue at the CRA level and other PCA level, TAA level, all these professional organizations that are involved with cigars, premium cigars, we don't really argue tobacco as much anymore unless we have to. Once they talk about health issues and they want to argue with that, we have to talk about data, right, of what actually is going on with the chemicals and the molecule and the absorption rate. But what we really argue to the general legislative body, the people that are making the laws, is what we don't even talk about tobacco anymore. You know what we talk about? Small business. Yeah. Are you wait? Every congressman has cigar shops in his district, her district. So I thought you were pro small business, sir, madam. Oh, well, you're going to put, all these mom and pop family businesses out of business with all of your regulations when we're trying to enjoy an adult product, a legal adult product in a responsible manner. But you want to put them out of business. So I thought you were small business friendly. No. That's how we argue now. We argue about jobs, employment, tax revenue. We've given up the fight about this tobacco and that tobacco. It's when we argue with the legislators about an exemption, we're arguing for jobs, employment, livelihoods. Are you trying to destroy livelihoods over a product that is legal? But at the same time, you're trying to legalize stuff that isn't really good for people, and you're using the revenue as the excuse as to why you want to do it, or the health reasons as medicinal purposes. Come on. I mean, it
ends up being all bullshit at the end of the day, because it's all that, Dave, I'm with you. I agree. I'm all for small business, but that revenue that comes in from the ganja, well, but it lands my pockets a little bit better.
Yeah, but we are arguing and winning successfully arguments about small business and protecting small business. That's why we band together in these professional organizations like the PCA. These organizations are retail organizations. You know how many thousands of retailers of tobacco there are, premium tobacco around the country, how
Oh,
many
yeah.
does that represent? How much
Oh, yeah.
revenue does that represent? A ton.
It's thousands.
And that's how we argue this. And suddenly they open their eyes and they go, well, I don't want to be seen as putting small businesses out to pasture and ruining family, legacy industry. And that's how we argue. So we've gotten traction there. And hand to God, hopefully the new administration, and he's very pro-business and deregulation, continues that way with regard to our industry.
Yes.
And all we can hope for. So that's why I'm excited for the new administration, not because of anything, how he talks and what he thinks. And I'm never going to be invited to tea with President Trump. I'm never going to have, I'm not on his Christmas card list. I'm not having, Thanksgiving dinner with him. What I care about is policy, and is it good for my business and the country as a whole? And that's all I look at, policy. It's not about personality for me, because I'm never going to sit down and talk with these guys. I felt that way about a lot of guys in Hollywood. I love certain actors, and then they start opening their mouth about their political views and bents, and I go, oh, no.
Oh, yeah.
Don't ruin it for me. I just like acting in the movies you're in. Just stick to that. Or musicians. You go to a concert, and they start talking about politics, and I go, sing the song. I paid to hear you sing songs.
That's right. That's
it for me, not your political. I don't want to. Don't try to push that on me.
That's right. Well, we all know how influential Hollywood is.
Well, that didn't work out so well for him this year.
We know how influential they are. They almost swayed me, but
yeah, this far, right?
Yeah.
And now they're on fire. Now they're burning over there. God help those people. And we'll see how well and how much they stick to their green new ideas and, earthy, crunchy, liberal, save the planet. They have put more greenhouse gases into the air with these fires than everything they probably tried saving in the past 15 years through all of their emissions, this and restrictions of that and everything else. But they didn't take care of the forests. And now they have these fires that are just out of control. And I don't even know what's going to happen to LA anymore. I mean, they're decimated. It's absolutely horrific. Being from Chicago and being on the Chicago Fire Department, I know what fires can do. And of course, we had the Great Chicago Fire. I was looking at some of those pictures on the news. It looked like Hiroshima.
Yeah.
I mean, unbelievable, catastrophic what's going on over there.
You don't realize all the massive effects and all that. I lived across the river from Los Alamos when it burned down in 2000, when the federal government was actually responsible for the fire on that. And, to watch that and just the glow at night from where I was at and to actually see the devastation that it caused that community, again, it's a city of 10,000 people, but all the resources went to one place, which was, we have to save the labs. Everything else in the city is collateral damage as far as the government's concerned on that. And I think you've kind of seen some of that with where they've put a lot of the resources in Los Angeles at, is that everybody else is collateral damage for certain aspects in certain areas of the county.
Cigar Man H is correct about never meet your heroes. There's some truth to that.
Yeah, never meet them.
But I digress. So what do you think of that cigar, brother? How's it going for you?
So, yes. So that barber pole was fucking delicious.
Gonna make top 10 this year?
I'm gonna have to pick myself up a few more of them. And
well, listen, I have a deal for you, my friend.
Do you?
505 Nation. You're gonna save 15% in free shipping.
Well, I guess where do I save that kind of coinage at?
At BlancoCigars.com.
Oh, well, okay then.
more. I feel like the pillow guy. What's his name? I forgot his name.
Mike Lindell.
Yes, Mike Lindell.
Yes, where crack dealers in Minneapolis have a conscience.
I don't know if you know this, but he's in a huge lawsuit apparently.
Yes, he is from his misinformation and lies in regards to the Dominion voting systems.
No, not that.
Oh,
Apparently in a huge lawsuit, from what I heard, and if I'm wrong, I apologize, but I did read some stuff, so you never know on the internet. Doesn't mean it's always true. With his shipping company, they're suing him for like hundreds of thousands of dollars or something for shipping. So I don't know how much more he's going to have free shipping.
I would like for his commercials not to be every other one on the television, for one.
Like clockwork.
Yes, I just lit up the second third right now.
Oh, nice.
So I'm
cigar. That is a special cigar, very unique. That is a Cameroon wrapper from Africa. Obviously, the Marifel family control the Cameroon industry pretty much. The binder is Mexican San Andreas.
Wow, what an odd combination on a blend there between the Cameroon and San Andreas. I was going to ask if this was a Cameroon wrap just based upon the smells that I was picking up when I lit it. I was like, is that Cameroon?
Yep, Cameroon.
Yeah.
And you get that sweetness on the finish. And then the fillers on that, I went a little more exotic with that one too. Brazilian and Nicaraguan. Interesting.
All right.
Very interesting. I try to use stuff, and this is what you get when you're able to make things at Placencia. It has the largest bank of tobaccos from around the world. I think it's 16 different countries. We have over 172 different varietals with regard to leaf position, area of growth, growing regions, and then countries. So I have, if it was a painter, I have every color on the palette wheel. And this is what allows me to have diverse products out there. It's something for everybody. You can't do that at every factory because a lot of people are limited to
how much tobacco they got or what quantities, you know.
And that's the big thing that I have at Placencia is the availability of tobacco.
Yeah, but like you said, you had basically you could throw a dart at a map and there's going to be tobacco from whatever country that is. Yeah, it's very good. I just started it in on it. I'm starting to get some droolage going.
Well, that's a good top 10. Listen, I could take up all top 10 if you want. I got
right. Yeah, this is very good on it. The retro was actually more of a shock to me than I expect. I was not expecting the way that retro hit. I was expecting something tamer, and that is a Mike Tyson haymaker on the retro.
It's still an elegant cigar. I wouldn't call it full body, but it's full flavor. It's got a lot of flavor.
Not at all. You know, I was expecting milder off of the retro just because of where how the smoke sits on the palate on it, but that retro is really, really punchy, and I like that.
And this is the nuance that I was telling you about. There are certain tobaccos that we use that are for flavor, and certain tobaccos we burn for just allure or aroma, right? So there are certain tobaccos you're going to get that when you smoke them and you only blow it in and out of your mouth, you're going to go, not so much flavor. But when you retrohale it, you get more aroma that blends and matches with what you're getting in your mouth. So that balance gets there. So it's two different cigars. For those of you guys that don't retrohale, I truly highly recommend, although I'm not telling you how to smoke your cigars, because if you enjoy smoking cigars the way you do, if you're not retrohaling, by all means, enjoy your cigars. But to get out of the cigar what we as blenders put into the cigar, for you to get that experience that we're intending for you to get, retrohaling is essential because some tobaccos don't have the flavor. They're put there for aroma. Now, if you've ever done a wine class or done a wine tasting, when they teach you how to drink the wine, before you ever drink the wine, what do they tell you to do? Bouquet, right? It's the same thing. Our retrohale is the bouquet. It's not smelling the smoke in the air. It's higher in the olfactory system. And that's at least where you get it. Now, once you try that, if you find not so much for me, don't do it anymore. But if you're never doing it, then you're missing out another dimension of we as blenders put into the cigar for you to experience. I've had guys that never retrohaled. I taught them how to retrohale. They go back to their favorite cigar and they go, "Oh, I don't like this as much." Or I got a guy that goes, "I only smoke full body." And then he retrohales once and he's crying because it's like wasabi coming out of his nose. So, it's like, are you sure you're a full body smoker?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I hear that a lot. I hear that a lot from people too on the full body. There was so I had that from one guy who told me, "Oh, I want full body and I want pepper and spice bombs." And I said, "Well, I got a stick for you." I retroed that cigar and I thought that my septum melted. I had tears coming down my eye. I mean, it killed me. And so he's sitting there puffing away on it, and then he retros. He's like, "That's not that bad." I'm like, "How's it not that bad? Like, I can smell the pepper and chili powder in the aromatics from you smoking this cigar, and it's bringing back memories of me retroing it." And it's like, I was like, "Do you not have any like senses in your nostril cavity?"
Different strokes, man. Different strokes. It's like that whole hot pepper thing, man. Listen. I like tasting my food, not just tasting burn on my tongue. But some people love that. So it just depends on what you like.
It is. My stepdad, and he'll do wings, and then he won't even sauce like my wings. He'll put it all there. He goes, "I got your paint thinner for you," and I'm like, first off, it's not it. I go, "Look, I consider myself kind of a salsa diva. And there's two types of hot salsas out there. Those that try to kill your palate because they fill it full of vinegar. Yeah. And then there's those that it's hot, it's spicy, but it's good because they don't use the vinegar. They use the natural acids from chilies, from tomatoes, from peppers. Those are what I like. I love those.
It's for flavor, not just for spice.
Yeah.
And that's the difference. And that's a similar thing with cigars, by the way. Some people just make cigars to be pepper bombs. And if that's what you like, then that's what you like. But it's not really difficult because that's just like putting so much hot sauce on your food, you can't taste what the actual food is. So what does it matter? Right? There's some guys, you just can't taste anything but the burn. And guys like those type of cigars and they go, "Man, I really love this cigar." It's like, bro, I can make those all day. I can make them blindfolded, but there's no nuance, there's no balance, there's no subtles.
It's all one dimensional. Those cigars tend to be one dimensional. Is basically all they are. They're one dimensional, and I'm not a fan of this. Look, I like pepper and spice in my cigars, but I also like the other flavors. I like it to all be one. Where that pepper is really nice, but also the other flavors. Oh, there's some vanilla and cocoa powder and all this that it mixes beautifully together into a cigar. That I like.
And you're going to miss a lot of that if you're not retrohaling.
Yes.
Because a lot of the things that we talk about, when you read some of these reviews, and I'm not going to tell everybody's reviews are legit because people have reviewed my cigars and said that they've gotten things out of my cigars, and I go, huh? But they get it. So they're not wrong for them. But I will say that some of the things that they mention, or anybody mentions, and I'll mention them too. I mention things like leather, wood, or a cedar versus an oak. Things like cocoa, like you mentioned cocoa a minute ago. Most of those things that I just mentioned, cocoa is interesting because it has two. You can taste cocoa, but you can also have a smell of cocoa. Cedar or oak, nobody's tasting that. It's an aroma of wood. It's not a taste of wood. Unless you're eating bark, how do you know what wood tastes like? Same thing with leather. Are you licking a baseball glove? No. you smell leather like a tannery or a leather jacket or something. It's that leathery smell. So those are what we're talking about. And you get those higher in the olfactory when you retrohale. So if you're not getting some of those nuances, you're missing it. Now, earth or grass, nobody's eating grass. Nobody's throwing dirt in their mouth. But you know what wet dirt smells like when it rains, or when you cut the grass and it's this fresh mown hay smell, right? Mm-hmm. That's where you get a lot of these aromas from, and that's from retrohale.
Yeah.
So you miss a lot of these nuances because guys will read it as, I don't get any of those things. I go, do you retrohale at all? No. Okay, well, that explains it.
That explains it, because, yeah, I mean, totally divine. The Antarctic cinnamon just tickles my nostrils fancy on this cigar. The Club Baby Seal fat is just rendered perfectly in my mouth like butter. I can really taste the fear in that seal as I'm smoking. Actually, we all know who I'm talking about. I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say the name.
Actually, in that cigar, I was going for roasted kumquats.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I can taste the endangered white rhino horn on this.
By the way, look at that burn, baby. Nice ash. Look at that.
Yeah.
Ooh, baby.
Number 2. Yeah, number 2 pencil. Yeah, that's the one that got me. I'm like, okay, just say graphite. I mean, really, are you sitting there licking every type of pencil out there? No, that's a number 4 tip pencil.
You know what? I will tell you this. I will tell you this. One time when I was younger, I was smoking this cigar, and I got this metallic taste. And that's when you go, wait a minute. Are you tasting metal? Because you don't taste metal, really, do you? Well, I remember when I was a kid, I put a battery on my tongue, to shock yourself.
Yeah.
And for that metallic metal taste when I zapped myself real quick when I was a kid, because you always get dared to do it. And that's what it reminded me of on this cigar. And I was like, it's that metal battery thing that I got out of that thing.
Occasionally at work, I'll put like a screw or something in my mouth to hold it. But I have smoked cigars where I have gotten like that kind of that metallic taste that from on there, and I'm like, okay, and and that's kind of what I equated to. Metallic. That's the best way I can describe it. I don't get it broken down to, oh yeah, this is sea salt from Nepal on there. I'm just like, yeah, it's salty. It has kind of like the sea salt component to it with that type of taste that the salt has. But I'm not breaking it down to the region of where I think that salt's from.
You're not getting a Himalaya pink salt versus
no, Peruvian. Out there, cinnamon. It's like, okay, yeah, cinnamon is it. Oh, no, this is cinnamon from the cinnamon bark off of this tree that's only grown in one region of Mexico.
Yeah. Well, listen, like I said, as long as the smoking it enjoys whatever it is, I don't judge anybody's palate.
I don't either. One was a guy I was talking to, and he was breaking down like wood on it, and I go, how would you know what the wood? He's like, well, I do competitive barbecue, and I use all sorts of different types of woods, and so and so he's like, the taste I'm picking up is similar to that type of wood that I've used and with barbecuing. Yeah. And I was like, makes perfect sense that you would understand like that type of wood. Me, I probably couldn't break down the genus of the tree, though. But there's a woody component. It's a hardwood or a softwood. I could break that down because we've all smelled that.
I'm getting the hint of Adirondack cedar with.
I just feel like I'm in the Catskills as I'm smoking this cigar.
There you go. Now, I've been talking about this so much, and I know there are going to be people that watch after we're actually doing this live. What I generally do is for those people that do not know how to retrohale, I give them a quick class, if that's okay. It's real easy. It's 3 things. You do 2 of them at once. So you got to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. You basically over accentuate what I'm telling you at first, And by the way, I did a YouTube for this one time before they took it off YouTube on how to retrohale. It was like 5-6 minutes. We had 88,000 views. Couldn't believe it. And that's what really opened up my eyes to the fact that we don't teach people in this industry as cigar smokers how to smoke a cigar. We teach them generally how to cut it and how to light it. But like that wine class, we don't teach people how to smoke it like how they teach people how to drink it. So that's why I'd be happy to give you a quick 1, 2, 3 crash course on how to retrohale for you guys to try to see if you like it, number one, and to see how it changes the cigars that you smoke. So here we go. It's real easy. Bring the smoke into your mouth like sucking liquid through a straw. Clench your jaw. Over accentuate that in the beginning because it's a technique that once you get it down, you're good. Clench your jaw. Let the smoke just sit on your tongue. Just sits on your tongue. And you do that. You do the other 2 things at the same time. You lift the tongue to the roof of the mouth. If you're taking up the space where the smoke is sitting in the palate, and you bring your tongue and raise it to the roof of your mouth, the smoke starts traveling back. Once it starts traveling back, as you hit the tongue to the roof of your mouth, exhale like you're blowing your nose. So it'll go right out the only other hole in your face, your nasal pharyngeal area. That's it.
I did it.
For the, you'd be amazed how many events that I do, and I'll ask for how many of you guys retrohale? Like 20% of the 20% will raise their hands. It's, okay, let me walk you through this. And then the light bulb go off with people, and they go, "It really changed the cigar."
It does change the cigar.
Completely.
I remember the first time I retrohaled, and it was a completely different experience to the smoke. And I'm like, how come nobody ever told me about this? And it was purely, on my side, accidental. But I was also a young smoker, too, so nobody ever took the time to explain that.
That's exactly my point. Nobody teaches anybody how to smoke a cigar in this business. So that's why I started incorporating the retrohale technique class in every event that I did. It started really happening. Happy 2025 there, brother.
Manny, good to see you. Nobody cold draws. I still cold draw.
Cold draw is another thing that people don't do.
I still cold draw. Yeah. You know, it gives me an anticipation on the cold draw of what I feel I can anticipate from the smoke as it gets going.
You say that, but what it also does is give you that baseline to see what happens when you do light it and see how it changes.
Yes.
So it's good. That's good. Lots of different in this in smoking a cigar to get the most out of the experience and to try to exaggerate what we put into it, and that people just get lost. They just light the cigar, smoke it, and that's why for me, I don't generally smoke cigars when I'm working because I don't enjoy the cigar because I'm not focusing on the cigar. And if I'm not focusing on it, it's like drinking a nice expensive scotch or bourbon while you're mowing the lawn. Who does that? You're wasting it, right? So it's about when you're doing it, taking the time, enjoying the product. Not cheap anymore to smoke cigars, so you want to make sure you get your money out of your cigar. And that brings me to another quick thing that I asked somebody one time. And cigar prices started going up, COVID and all that stuff. And I asked a guy who smokes a lot of cigars and spends a lot of money on cigars. I said, what do you feel a good cigar value is these days? How much do you pay? How much do you think you should pay for a good cigar these days? And now in the industry, I see the sweet spot now as $10 to $12 for a decent cigar, depending on the state you live in with taxes and everything else. Everything being equal, $10 to $12. That being said, he came up with the most interesting answer. It took me a while to wrap my head around, but once I wrapped my head around, I completely agreed. You know what he told me? He goes, $10 an hour. I said, what do you mean? He goes, I think that I should be able to smoke a cigar, a good cigar, and spend about $10 an hour.
Makes perfect sense.
So I said, so if you spend $20, he goes, I better have 2 hours worth of good smoke.
It does. That makes perfect sense if you break it down to that. Most cigars are going to run you at an hour to an hour 15 on smoking the cigar. Yeah, $10 an hour. Yeah,
right. He goes, I'm willing to spend $10 an hour. I think that's good value for my time. Right? And I never thought about that. And then I tried equating it to a beverage, and I said, oh, you can't do that.
You can't. No, yeah, I agree, and I agree that sweet spot, does sit, but that $9 to $12 range is really the sweet spot, and there's a lot of good cigars that sit in those price ranges. Back when I was doing reviews, on Thursdays, I did, I would do a high end cigar review, so it was something $20+ I would smoke, and the amount of people who would get mad at me for smoking that because they're like, I can't afford to smoke that. Okay, but it doesn't matter because so you post a picture of you buying a $5 for $45. You could buy 2 of these for $45, so you could afford it if you wanted to. The question is, if you want to. But then these are the same people who get these more luxury cigars and they sit on them forever because they feel they need to have a reason to smoke them. And I say, you can smoke it at any time. You want a good reason to smoke a $40 cigar? I'll give you. You're alive. That's the best reason I can give you. Enjoy it. They are meant to be smoked, not to sit in your humidor for 10 years while you make up excuses for why you can't smoke it.
That's right. But the question to this guy was specific about value, right? So he said, and that's where your $40 cigar comes into play. He'd go, that's not a good value for me. I don't think the cigar is worth it because I pay $40. I only get 2 hours worth of good smoke, or an hour and a half, or an hour and 15, whatever. He'd go, not a good value.
No, not a good value. No, and and let's be honest, most of those cigars are not worth the $40 that you're going to spend on it. You're paying for the name.
And I will tell you, being a cigar, I have seen more $100 cigars come out in the past 15 months when the economy has not been so bad as it's been in a long time. And I sit there and I go, is this the time that you want to come out with a $100 cigar when people are struggling to pay gas in their tank and food and rent is going? And I go, I just don't get it. So I'm a value-oriented guy because I'm a consumer too. Now, I just had a price increase this past month for 2025, and I think it averaged 5%. And for me, that even hurt because I was like, man, I'm a value guy. I have 2 cigars that are $20 out of the 7 brands that I make. Everything else is under 20, 15, 14, 13, 12. I have cigars 8 to 10. I have cigars under 5. So I have a cigar scale with regard to price range for everybody. But even when I started looking at it, going, man, I'm reaching the $20 range. But then again, I'm aging these tobaccos for years. And so there's my justification where nowadays it just costs more money to be able to age things that long before you use them. And I can't get around that. The cost of the material and the labor is now going up, and transportation has gone up since COVID. Since COVID, things have gone up 15, 20%.
We had this, some people need to know that I'm also big in sports cards and sport in that. And we had this conversation about some of the insane prices that the hobby boxes of sports cards are running. And I go, you gotta remember, in 2019, this same brand that right here was $70 for a box. It's now $430. There's no difference. You're getting the same amount of cards. You're getting everything's exactly the same, but I'm paying almost $400 more for the same box. Nothing changed. Why is that? And we had an in-depth conversation. I have my own, feelings on that. But, again, I hate to see it go up, but I also understand that everything costs more. And if you kept your price down for 2024, you're going to have to make that up somewhere, which means 2025.
And I did. I tried to keep it during the worst of things without increasing. I didn't have a raise for 2024 when everybody was going up. I didn't raise a dime, but I couldn't. I just can't sustain it because everything is going up. My property taxes for this place, even that's going up. And I'm going, what changed in the past year and a half, 2 years? Every year my property tax goes up, and I go, how? How is it possible?
I know.
But
Mine went up this year too, and I was upset about it. It went from 625 to 680.
oh, I wish that's all I was paying.
I don't. It's a cheap cost of living up here. I get to tell people I work in Colorado. I make the Colorado money, and I get the cheap Wyoming living.
Well,
offset.
It's more expensive where I'm living now.
Yeah, because everybody's moving down there.
It's not that. It's the hurricanes.
That too.
The insurance now in this state is going to go through the roof. It's going to be a problem. We're going to have a tort reform situation here in the state of Florida because these past two hurricanes, it's going to be it's going to be 250. You know what they're saying about California with the fires for the cost to rebuild? They don't know it, but that's what they've already started estimating it. It's $250 billion in damage in Florida alone from these past two hurricanes. It wrecked it. The first one, the storm surge flooded places that have never been flooded ever. So now the claims that are being made are astronomical. So now the problem is you'll be able to afford to move to Florida and pay a mortgage, but you won't be able to afford the insurance. So unless we have some type of tort reform at a legislative level through the Florida state legislature, it's going to be astronomical. And I'm really worried about it, to be honest. It's kind of
Manny's over here flexing. He lives on a golf course.
Yeah. No. He's in California. I can just imagine.
So based upon the increases of what's going on in Florida, has there been consideration on your part to maybe move headquarters elsewhere? Nope. Okay.
What I would have to do, what I'm looking at doing next, is that I'm in a so my warehouse is 5,000 square feet. 800 of that is office, and I have a small lounge in the front, a reception area, and everything else. The next move for me, when I may do so, is to buy a building, because at that point, at least, I'm not burning my rent, right? Because right now, I'm losing all my. I mean, I'm paying tens of thousands of dollars tens of thousands, ridiculous. But that's where I'm at right now, because when I went to go buy a building, and I was going to buy a building about 5 years ago, $1 million building it was 10,000 square feet. I lost the bid by $15,000. And I didn't even know there was somebody else. The guy played me, the owner of the building, played me off somebody else for an extra 15 grand and gave it to that guy. I was livid. It was a beautiful spot. We were going to do 5,000 square feet of primo cigar bar lounge, and the 5,000 in the back was going to be wholesale and for the company and the brand and everything else. So we were going to be a one-stop shop, but it was going to be a destination location, huge place. And I lost it by 15 grand. I was beside myself. 3 months later, COVID hit. I would have been in deep doo-doo had I got that building, because things slowed down so much with COVID. We couldn't travel. We weren't doing events. I mean, it was insane. I'm not a big internet cigar guy. So I don't sell to Cigars International. I don't sell to JR. We just got back into Famous. If you guys like to buy cigars online, Famous Smoke Shop carries our product, and they're doing some really good deals right now on us because we're introducing some of our lines. I sell to cigarandpipes.com. I sell to Neptune online, and those are pretty much the big guys. Now, if you have a brick and mortar with a website, you can sell my product online. But as far as the big internet house, JR and all those guys, I don't sell to them. And that's who really made out like bandits during COVID, because so many shops were so restricted and closed or, couldn't open for a while. The guys that people kept smoking. In fact, that some cases they had more time to smoke because they weren't at work or they were working from home. So cigar sales for premium cigars actually went through the roof, but for the online guys, not for a lot of the brick and mortars. Some it did, depending on the state you lived in, because they were more lenient and this and that and the other thing. Some shops were closed, went out of business, never to return. And I was a brick and mortar boutique brand, right? I'm proud to call myself. I'm proud. Some people use the word boutique in a negative connotation or what. Boutique to me means that I'm more attuned to the details in the production of my cigar. I am not a mass marketed cigar with regard to, I don't make millions and tens of millions of cigars. If I added up all the cigars that I make for mine plus all the other brands, I'm probably over 1 million cigars. Yeah, I'm over 1 million. But for Blanco brands, I'm not, just Blanco brands. So I have the luxury of being able to be very involved with the production and monitoring and very picky with the material that we use through Placencia. So we have very close attention to detail in the production of our cigars to make the best possible product we can. When you're making tens of millions of cigars of the same product, you got to use what material you have, right? And sometimes there isn't the best material all the time for that product, but you still got to make those cigars because the demand is there, right? So sometimes the quality suffers. You'll find that with some of those big cigars, you'll find that, this isn't exactly the way I used to remember it.
It's not, but I think that's what also makes yours stand out a whole lot. Is
right.
That no matter what I smoke, I'm going to get the same consistency almost every time. The big brand stuff may be great this time, and then the next 3, it's down here. They can't keep that. They can't keep that going to continue with that mass production of a lot of their core line stuff.
And so for me to say boutique, some people use the word handcrafted. They're trying to play off the word craft like craft beer, right? Because when you make smaller batches of craft beer, those guys that they focus on, and that batch is phenomenal, and then they can control it really tightly to replicate it. But when you're making this much of it, it becomes a lot harder to sustain that quality control. And that's why I'm proud to say that I'm in the boutique craft cigar business. Right?
I would totally put you in that category on that, and I don't think it's a bad thing.
No,
out there,
Oh, it's a boutique brand. Like it's less than. It's actually the other way.
It's not. Which when
are putting our hands and our soul into these things. Every one of our cigars, we're trying to create the best one and replication every time, and we're selecting and selecting and selecting. You know how many seconds I sell? I don't have seconds because everything I put out is here, and if it isn't here, it's not going out.
It's not. No, that was the whole point behind starting the channel. When I started the channel in 2019, was to get people to go to the other side of the humidor when they're shopping, because there are gems back there. The quality of the tobacco is better. The consistency is better. The quality is better. Don't get all caught up in the bright lights of what's up front. Put your tunnel vision on and go to the back, because there's great stuff back there. If you're willing to try it, if you want to expand your palate out, try something different. Smoke here. You're a person who smokes this brand. That's a smoker of big brand X and this cigar. Try this cigar from this brand. I guarantee you'll enjoy that one far more, because you can taste it. I can taste the difference in most of the smaller brands. I can taste the difference in the tobacco quality. It is a higher quality.
Well, the attention to detail is there, number one. The downside, here's the downside. What's up, Robert? The downside to some boutique brands is that they don't control a lot of things because they're not cigar manufacturers. They're not cigar makers, right? They contract to a factory, and that factory makes the stuff for them. So unless that relationship is there, you got to trust that what you're getting is the same every time.
I also think that,
and that's the difference with a lot of brands. A lot of these small brands, they'll call a factory and make a cigar and be like, I love it. And then they'll say, all right, give me another 2,000 cigars, which is a nothing order, right? And then they don't get exactly the same thing because it's so small. It's too small for the bigger factories to replicate something because they're dealing with hundreds of thousands of cigars and they got a 2,000 cigar order. And it's good enough, right? So that's why for me, the fact that I'm in my family's factory, I have a little bit more hands-on. I work there. I have an apartment in Esteli. I live there for part of the year working on product. We monitor things. I had people in the factory that work for me. Even though my family owns the factory, I still have my own employees in the factory doing my production management, making sure that everything remains the same because Placencia makes a lot of cigars for a lot of people. And you can't get lost in the shuffle. So for me, the quality control is essential, and that's why we spend as much time and money maintaining that quality as that we can, because that's why, like you said, people will come back to another Blanco and another Blanco and another Blanco because I can't make a living on a one-time sale. If people don't come back and buy my cigar over and over and over because they enjoy that cigar and they know they can rely on, I picked it up this time and 5 months from now and a year from now, it's going to be the same, then that's where you lose your customer base. You have to maintain that quality. And
consistency is huge, and that quality control within that consistency is so hard to. Yeah, exactly. It's so hard to do, but
and
you've mastered that of the consistency on that.
Yeah. So to lift the curtain for you a little bit, to let you know what happens is that tobacco years, every crop is a little bit different. The yield this year is not the same yield as it is next year, or it was the year before, or 2 years from now. It's a plant. Nothing. This is not a widget. It's not. Everything is exact. And then it's handmade. You have better crops than other crops. So how do I maintain that consistency on top of all these things? Is that I have to go down and taste tobaccos that I'm using in a blend and identify where they changed. And then I may have to tweak the blend so you don't notice it. So my job is to seek a perfection in something that is inherently and will always be imperfect because it's an organic product. But my job is to try to replicate a cigar to be the same forever. Impossible. But that's what we strive for. And if you can't tell the difference, then I'm succeeding.
I think that's probably one of the hardest aspects of the entire process out there. If you have a good product, it will sell. It will sell and it will sell itself. But dealing with the environmental factors is, I think, probably the hardest aspect of the whole thing.
There's some of them you can't control. I can't control how much rain happens. We can control the amount of water if there's not enough because we can bring water to the plant. But I can't control too much water. I can't control too much humidity. I can't control too much heat. So too much of anything can cause damage or less of a yield. So I can control soil content because we can add nutrients to the soil to replicate. And by the way, that's a huge factor of what we do in this industry. The farming aspect starts with the soil. If we have a great yield and the tobacco comes out marvelously, by the way, we have tracked everything. We have tracked average temperatures, hours of daylight, humidity levels, and soil content, whatever's in the soil. So next year's crop, we try to replicate what we can control. Okay, we know exactly what's in the soil this crop. When we go back to growing that field again, we test the soil first. And if it's lacking in certain nutrients, we add them back in to make sure we're mimicking what the previous controls were. And then we try to monitor how much water we had to add, how much natural rain fell, and then we try to make sure that we maintain that amount of water But when it rains too much, we get something called drunk tobacco. It's overhydrating. There's just too much. The leaves begin to droop because there's more weight in the leaves because the plant soaked up all this water. And that's not good. What also can happen at that time is that you can have mold. Mold can develop. When we're drying it in the barns and curing it, when it goes from green to brown, when we lose the chlorophyll, we have to change the level of heat and humidity and airflow as to not ruin all the tobacco because there's too much moisture in the leaves. This is much more scientific than most people realize. So when we do tours to Nicaragua, and I take people from the seedlings in the greenhouses all the way to the box, we go through this entire process, and people go like this. They go, "Oh my God, I can't believe what? Are you kidding me?" And that's why when they go 200 sets, 300 sets of hands have had to touch this tobacco to get all the way to your. Then they realize it when they see it, and they go, "I can't believe I'm not paying more for a cigar." Nobody ever complains for a product after I take them through the tour. They go, "I only paid $10 for this? Really? Are you kidding?" So, there's some advantages to taking people on the tour to open their eyes to the understanding. And I usually equate it again to wine, the winemaking industry, because it starts in the soil with the grape, and then the fermentation of the grape, the fermentation of the grape, the aging of it's very similar. It's very similar, and it takes a lot of time. And yet we consume them like that. 1 hour.
It is one of the few things out there where you're literally burning money.
Right. But the time it took for me to get this cigar, for me to burn it, was years. Yeah. Years. This tobacco is 3 to 5 years before we even use it. And then we age it. So from the seed that this leaf was planted to the day I'm smoking it is over 5 years, maybe 6, maybe 7. And I'm burning it in an hour. It's gone. It's amazing.
It is amazing. Yeah. The whole process. I'm always fascinated by the whole process. And I was the first time I went to a tobacco farm. I was like, I knew what was involved, but actually physically seeing it firsthand, it blew my mind because I'm like, I didn't realize all the steps, everything that was required to get from A to Z on it. You usually about the steps, A, D, G, F, and Z, but you don't see everything else in between all those.
A good example is the cigar you're smoking. Hundreds of the tons of tobacco that go into getting that product in one spot and together. You're talking about wrapper that had to come from Africa, binder that had to come from Mexico, fillers that had to come from Brazil, and then the stuff that we have in Nicaragua. And to bring it all together, just the transportation of the material alone. It's amazing. Boats and containers and trucks and holy cow, man! It's a miracle you can put stuff like that together, and it's a huge undertaking.
You do, and it's a delicious cigar. It's very good,
and that's the one advantage that we have against the Cuban tobacco cigars, right? Mm-hmm. Everything in Cuba allegedly. But it's all mono. It's all from the same area. How much variety can you possibly get when you have tobacco all coming from the same area? Right?
I much prefer smoking this than I do anything from Cuba.
And it's a lot less expensive, I guarantee you.
It's a lot less expensive. And again, the quality control, we can go back to that. As some people say, the Cuban snobs, it's not a real cigar unless it's from Cuba. And my response is, yes, but I prefer my cigars to perform.
Correct. Now, my comments are to the Cuban guys all the time. And don't get me wrong. Cubans perfected the premium cigar. My family was part of that business for over 100 years, right? Or 80 years, something like that. I still say to this day, Cubans make the best cigars. In Nicaragua, in Honduras, the Dominican Republic, everywhere else. The Cubans still run this business, but just not in Cuba anymore. I mean, you think of all the big and popular and successful brands in the world. Who runs them? Who owns them? Because
Cuba.
what we perfected this in Cuba, and then we were expelled, and then we just moved and did it somewhere else. Some of us went to Nicaragua, some of us went to Honduras, some of us went to Dominican Republic, some of us went to Central America or South America, and we did it over. It took us a generation to perfect what we did in Cuba in those other countries because everything changed. Topography changes, elevation changes, humidity, heat, pestilence. We had to relearn all the nuances of those areas that we were now new in to perfect the growing process. And now that we've done it in Cuba, in Nicaragua, for example, after 60 years, we've now perfected it in Nicaragua like we had in Cuba. And now look at the cigars coming out of that.
Fantastic. Yeah, they're amazing.
Name a brand. My father.
Mm-hmm.
Padron. Oliva. AJ Fernandez. All of these people are Cuban. I can keep going. Did I say Perdomo? I don't know if I missed Perdomo.
Perdomo.
You go on and on. I mean, they're all Cuban. They're all Cuban. The guys that even run the mid-size factories are Cuban. I mean, you name some of these smaller boutique brands, they're still being run and made by Cuban-run factories doing things in the tradition. They did them in Cuba. They just had to leave. So all of the education, the experience, the know-how, they already had done it and perfected it there. They just had to come to a new country and figure out different levels of humidity here. How do I counteract that? Different elements in the soil. What do I have to do to make it grow better here than I did over there? The bugs are different here and different season, and I got to combat that. Blue mold almost wiped out Placencia in the early days, a couple years, because he was growing it like he did in Cuba, but the elevation and the level of humidity, he didn't take that into consideration. It was much different, and it wiped out crops, and you can wipe them out in days. So it almost drove him out of business. But once he learned, he adjusted, and he was able to become the largest tobacco grower in Central America. But you had to learn these things. So it took a generation. Now the tobacco in Nicaragua is second to none. And the fact that the country is so big, we have different areas and regions to grow, which render different product because the soil contents are different. However, the entire country is volcanic in nature, which means it's got natural miracle grow in the soil. The contents are still different. So if and we do this at the factory, we actually give this taste test. I'll give you the same tobacco plant that we grow in Ometepe, Esteli, Condega, and Jalapa, the four major growing regions. I'll give you a leaf from the bottom, which is we call seco. I'll give you one from the middle we call viso, and one from the top we call ligero. I'll give you the seco from each of those four growing regions. We roll up the leaf, and we have you smoke just that leaf, and you can taste the difference between all four. But it's the same plant from the same position, but the soil's different. Then we have two minor growing areas as well, which also render it different. A new one's called Pueblo Nuevo. Not a lot of people know about that, but there's more tobacco in that area. So we have different regions within one country. You don't do that. You can't barely do that in the Dominican Republic because it's this big. So the variety within one country is limited. Now, Brazil has a very nice range of tobacco because they grow in different areas of the country as well, and they've identified different soil content which will render a different flavor to the tobacco. So it's that variety. So the fact that I can put a cigar together like you're smoking from literally tobaccos around the world, you can't do this in Cuba. It's impossible. And that's why, to me, it gets boring after a while because all you can use is one type of material over and over and over and over and over again. So that's why I'm happy to have tobaccos from 16 different countries to use.
Yeah.
And everybody's different. So you don't lose.
No, and your creativeness with the blending is phenomenal. You
Thank
know,
you.
I love it. You know,
The guy on the wall I showed you. It's because of him. I'm today.
yeah. I mean, you've really mastered that concept, which is hard enough on its own to put out something that's good, but then to put out something that's good and consistent, and then to put out something else that is equally as good and equally as it's so hard. But I
Yeah.
think you've got that down because I've smoked a ton of Blanco cigars, and every one I've never had a bad one. Some I enjoy far more than others, but I've never had a bad one, and
That's
I can honestly tell you that. And
well.
whether you're sitting here next to me or not, I would still say that to anybody. I've never had a bad one. There
If
are
you
some I enjoy more than others.
if you haven't smoked one yet, if somebody was to say to me, and I have a lot of people say this, so I'm going to say it here because I offered the special on my website and everything else. If somebody was to say, what is the cigar if I had to smoke from Blanco to get a good representation of what you do? Well, it depends because people like medium and full body, right? But if I had to say a cigar, it's the Blanco 9. The Blanco 9 is a dark Corojo, all Nicaraguan, 3 different Lajero leaves, but not full body punch you in the mouth like a La Flor Dominicana. It's early priming. And what we mean by that is it's not something that a lot of people do either. What we do is we pick the leaves early from the top of the plant. So they're not as mature, thick material, full flavored and peppery as they would if they were picked last, which is what they usually are. So this cigar has 3 different types of Lajero from 3 different regions, from Esteli, Condega, and Jalapa. Nicaraguan binder from Jalapa, and a Corojo wrapper from Esteli. So this cigar was our #1 rated cigar of the year in 2018. It also got a 95 in CA, a 93 in Smoke Magazine, a 90 in Cigar Snob Magazine, and Best Buy in Cigar Journal because we also sell in Europe, so it's in Cigar Journal. But it's done phenomenal for us. It's our #1 seller. If you wanted to try a cigar from us and you had to pick one, I'd say try this one. It's moderately priced for a #1 rated cigar of the year. It's got a lot of flavor. It's not over the top, but it's enough for everybody, and it's not too much for some. So that would be the cigar that I would say if you wanted to try a Blanco, pick up a 5-pack. And by the way, my favorite size is Lancero, so I'm biased when it comes to that. I'm a Lancero guy. So I would say try Lancero, but you don't have to try Lanceros. If you like Toro, Robusto, Torpedo, Double Corona, we've got all that. We actually have it in a limited edition. The limited edition is a 6 1/4 by 58. I didn't make any of these cigars in a big ring gauge. I made them in 52, all 52 ring gauge. And then I made the Lancero for me primarily, and that did very well. People loved it. But people were like, oh, you got to have a big ring gauge because the 6x60 and everything. And I'm like, I'm not a big 60 ring gauge guy, but I make them. In this blend, I had to actually start from scratch because when I expanded the blend into bigger ring gauge, it was flat. It didn't work. So remember I talked to you about tweaking things? So what I had to do with this cigar is I couldn't tweak the blend and change the ratios. It just wasn't working. It was still flat. It was just too much filler. So what I did is I started with the core 3 Lajeros in the filler. I added a 4th for girth, which kept it amped up. I then had to change the binder because it wasn't there yet, but it was better. I changed the binder to a Lajero binder. And at that point, I was like, do we have any Lajero wrapper here? And so Nestor was like, listen, Lajero really isn't used as wrapper. And I mean, we have some, but we have to look through like 800 pounds of material, and maybe we find 40 pounds, 30 pounds that are wrapper grade. But we could do it. We just can't make a lot of it. I said, we'll make it a limited edition. So the one cigar that I make in the 9, it has a footband. It says JT Limitado. It's a 58 ring gauge. It's 6 1/4, in length. And I think that one goes for like 19 and change. The rest are like 10, 11, 12, maybe $13. But the limited edition, which by the way, takes me 2 years to make that cigar. 6 Ligeros. It's all Ligero. If you don't know, I'll explain this to you real quick. Ligero has a very poor combustion rate. It burns very slowly. So if you don't ferment it thoroughly, it won't burn. That's why when you have cigars with a lot of Ligero, it'll cone because that burns slower than the binder and the wrapper, and you'll end up with a cone, or it'll pit because it'll track different and it'll start canoeing on you and stuff like that. So we had to ferment this tobacco for 2 years to get it to burn evenly because one Ligero had to ferment for 13 months. The other Ligero had to ferment for 15 months. And I had to figure this out because even though I got the blend in about 2 weeks, it wouldn't burn right. I couldn't get it to burn correctly. So I had to go and figure out each of the 6 Ligeros, how much time I had to ferment it to get it to burn evenly. And that was a nightmare, and I will never do it again. But it's a phenomenal cigar. It's the regular 9, a little bit more on steroids with regard to the strength. It is amped up a little bit, but is definitely not over the top, but definitely a unique smoke and one of the very few 100% Ligero cigars on the market. So if you're into spending a little bit more money, still isn't $20 yet, almost. I know other companies I would have charged $50 for that. But I want it to be as affordable as possible so people can smoke it and enjoy it. If you can't afford it, then what's the point of making it, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
That's my
There you go, people. There you go. Remember, blancocigars.com, promo code 505Nation. You'll save 15% off your order, plus free shipping on anything over $75.
Yep.
So take advantage of that. Dave is nice enough to save you guys some coinage for this month only. So you got till the end of the month to get your orders in. So take advantage of it.
Yeah, I want you to try possibly a cigar you haven't tried before. You can just do a five pack of that. You know, that'll get you over $75. So
if you've never had Blanco cigars, I'm telling you, been a big fan of Blanco cigars for a while. So I'm very happy the availability to again.
We do have
keep this full.
There you go. We do have one product that you can get 4 different cigars, and I promo rated it. You know, 2 of the Cigar Obsessions you smoked, right? There's 4. We do have a sample pack, all Toro, one of each of the 4. So this one's the Habano over here. Oh, sorry, this one. Habano, box press, Cameroon. I'm looking at this backwards. Ecuadorian Sumatran box press, the Cameroon, the Habano in the gold, and then this is the barber pole you smoked, the BG Reserve, and a humidipack. So if you bought these individually in your shop out of a box, you know, individually, it'd be about $65. We have this. You can't use your coupon on this because we prorated. We have a special going on these, $39.95.
That's a steal. It's a steal.
Right. So if you buy 2 of these, you're at $40 or $80. You get free shipping.
Free shipping.
$30 worth of cigars for $80 and free shipping. And they're humidipacked, so you're safe to travel and everything else. And you should get to try 4 different cigars, so you figure out which one you like the best, and then you can buy, you know, what you like out of the best. Some people like them all. The BG got a 93 rating, and the Habano got a 91 rating. So 2 of those are rated. The other 2 will be rated soon. The Ecuadorian and the Cameroon you're smoking. So,
well, I would put the BG. I would say 93 is probably a very. I would agree with that rating. The Cameroon on this, I would put a little bit higher on that, probably a 94. If I had to throw a rating at it, the Cameroon, it's fantastic.
So that's it. Now I can say that I have a 91 rated, a 93 rated, and I also have a 94 rated cigar in this pack because he just rated it 94.
Yeah, it is. The Cameroon and the San Andreas work so well together with the blend.
It took me years to figure that out because I was forever. People were saying to me, "Do a Cameroon wrapper because it's so elegant." Every time I tried to blend with it, no matter what I did, it came out the same cigar. Because Cameroon is very unique and has a sweetness to the end. And everything I did with it, I was like, I'm smoking the same cigar. And then I tried some other fillers and same cigar. I was like, son of a bitch, the Cameroon is too dominant here. What can I do to mute this Cameroon enough so I can get some other things going on and have a little more complex flavor? And I just said, you know what? What is the most diabolical, different tobacco that I have available to me? Mexican San Andreas. It's earthy. It'll take away from the sweetness. Let me see how that works. And it muted it just enough. And then I said, now I can do some things with the filler. And that's finally how I broke that Rubicon of Cameroons all taste the same to me.
Yeah, it is. It's different. It's unique. I really like this. And if you're a fan of vitamin N, it does have a bit of a vitamin N kick to it. So you are still getting that nice dosage of nicotine from the Cameroon off of out of this. So you're not losing any of that strength.
Thanks, man. Thank you.
It's a fantastic smoke. It's beautiful. The ride since I lit this up has been amazing since I've started smoking this cigar.
Feel your fingers.
Yeah, I can still feel the fingers. I got the heater going right here. It's a beautiful cigar. Like, it's probably one of the most. I'll say this: it is the most unique Cameroon cigar that I have smoked, and really, I think you're correct about that San Andreas, because it did tone down a lot of those dominant flavors that Cameroon provide on that, and adding in that earthiness that the San Andreas provides really does a good job of halting that overly sweetness that you can get out of Cameroons. Yep. And most manufacturers, they try to kill you with Lajero and Cameroons just to try and offset that. And it's not. It has everything you want. Whether you're a Cameroon fan or a San Andreas fan, you're getting the best of both worlds out of this.
So the one critique that somebody gave me about this cigar that I respected, some gentleman that I admire his blending and everything else. I'm not going to mention his name, but he's well known in the business. I gave him this cigar, and I asked him what he thought about it. I didn't tell him what was in it. I just wanted his opinion of what he thought. And he said it's very Don Carlos Cameroon-ish by Fuente, but he said it's smoother because it doesn't have the earthiness of the Dominican tobacco. And I said, well, you're right. I'm not using any Dominican tobacco. He goes, yeah, I can tell, because this is a much smoother cigar. It doesn't have that earthiness that Don Carlos has. But I will tell you, the Don Carlos is one of the most absolute phenomenal Cameroons out there. And the fact that that was where he put me with the Don Carlos, but smoother. I was like, wow, thank you. That is, kudos. I mean, that's a phenomenal cigar, a phenomenal brand, a phenomenal family. To even be mentioned in the same breath as the Don Carlos Cameroon, for me, that's a win. That's a win. I don't like to compare my cigars to other people's, but people go, well, what's the cigar like? And then they refer to something that they know to give you kind of an idea. And so I don't get that feeling, but that's what he told me.
A little bit early, or in the middle portion of the cigar, it had that Don Carlos feel to it. But again, the profiling of the flavoring hit on a different aspect than how the Don Carlos hits. Sure. So that's what really made it stand out.
Well, you got Brazilian and Nicaraguan, and the Don Carlos doesn't have any of that going on.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. It doesn't. Like when he did it, the one cigar of his that I loved was when he did the double Oscuro with the Dominican Cameroon Oscuro and the African Cameroon Oscuro. Was one of my favorite cigars that he manufactured and put out. And that's always one that stands out in my head is when somebody asks me your all-time favorite cigar, that sits up there as one of those ones all time, and
a good cigar. And that's the beautiful thing about this. There's no real bad cigar except the one that doesn't sell.
Yeah, that's right. There are no bad cigars. There's cigars that are for you and not for you. Is how I look at it. I've smoked plenty of good cigars. They're just not in my wheelhouse. The flavor profiling isn't what I like, but it's not bad. It's just not for me. But I'll recommend it to people who tell me they like those certain types of flavors in cigars. Oh, well, here, this cigar you would like. You know, I know what I like, and you know, and I smoke a lot of stuff and a lot of different stuff. So you know, and I have an ever changing palate, like we talked about earlier, where one year I was really big on Sandreas, and I was really big on Habano, and last year I was really big on Barber Poles. This year I don't know where I'm going to go.
Well, I remember I did look at your Instagram to see some of the cigars you were posting, and I was like, man, you are really out there. I mean, there were some cigars there that I never heard of, and I try to keep my head to the ground with regard to seeing what's out there. But you had some stuff in there that I was like, what? Who is that? I didn't even know it. You got me on those. So
you know, I'm always out there trying to find that diamond in the rough. You know,
yeah.
I want to bring it to the people. I want people to enjoy and have fun when they're smoking. And you know, I'm more on the tobacco nerd side of things. So I'm always trying to test my palate on different things that I may not enjoy. You know, I'm not the biggest on Sumatra, but last year I've had some banger Sumatra cigars, and it's all how it's been blended. You know, and I've come to the realization that it's not the tobacco itself that I'm not a fan of. It's how they've been blended is what I didn't like. But when you get it blended right and properly, it's a beautiful tobacco.
Yep, you're absolutely right. I agree. Lots of good things out there. I'm glad to be in the mix and be mentioned in the same breath as a lot of these manufacturers. And I just want to do justice to my family's legacy and continue this for the next generation. And hopefully when I'm not around, there'll be people still smoking Blanco cigars.
Yes, and I think it will be. I think you've done a fantastic job, and to the future generations of what's coming out of Blanco, I have no doubt that whoever you tag to succeed you out there is going to continue to do the family and the family name beautiful justice.
Ojalá, as they say in Spanish. I wish. Yes. Ojalá is actually a spin from a little bit of a language thing here for you. It's funny because we a lot of languages borrow other languages' things. And in Spain, of course, the Moors invaded and took over Spain for hundreds of years. So there's a lot of Moorish and Muslim influence in the southern half into the middle of the country. They didn't get it past the because they were stopped by the Spanish king, and the mountains. The natural mountains actually were helped in that effect. But the words that we use, ojalá, in Spanish to say, oh, I wish or I hope, is actually derived from inshallah, which is Arabic for God willing. So from your lips, inshallah or ojalá, God willing, what you said comes true, and the next generation continue the legacy that I've tried to perpetuate for those generations that have gone way before me, that I want to honor their work and lives of toil trying to keep their industry going. I didn't want it to disappear off the face of the earth. We'll see what happens.
Excellent. Everybody, thank you guys so much for hanging out with us tonight. I had a great time with David. Thank you so much. Reminder that if you go over to blancocigars.com, when you check out, use promo code 505Nation to save 15% and free shipping on any orders over $75. There's also some special deals on there that are not available through the promo code, but you can pick up, like the Cigar Obsession sampler pack are available. And go check them out. If you haven't had anything from Blanco, please go check out Blanco Cigars. They fantastic. And
help your veterans out there that are out there out in the front, and maybe pick up a bag for them for $25. Enjoy it too, downrange somewhere. That would be good.
Excellent. Yes, that's right. So go pick up the Cigars for Warrior $25 pack to help support our frontline soldiers out there away from home, so they can have a little piece of home out there as well. And that's it for tonight, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. Thank you, David. Next Monday night, content creator, podcaster, and aspiring budding cigar manufacturer himself. Ray Truelife will be my guest. So come hang out with Ray and myself next Monday night. And that's it. We will see you all next week. Thank you, chat. You guys rocked it as usual. And so take care. Be safe out there. Don't do anything David and I wouldn't do because we're sweet and innocent boys.
That's right. Stay smoky, guys. Stay smoky.
We'll see you.